Hello and welcome to Adoption Pop. We're a podcast journalist,
a filmmaker,
and a cultural critic burst pop culture's favorite adoption tropes.
because we're adopted.
Haley, did you have a favorite book from high school, like English literature class?
Would it surprise you to know that given a reading list, I would finish it to completion?
Okay.
Some favorites, I'm going to say Lord of the Flies, 1984, Animal Farm. Seems about right for me, I believe. How about you?
Yeah. Well, I never read anything I was supposed to read in high school. Because I like to read, but I don't like being told what to read, which also should not surprise you about me. However, I have made up for it in adulthood. Because in addition to watching 4 films and television adaptations in preparation for this episode, I also read Emily Brontë's 1847 novel. Who picked this? Pop star Justin says that Wuthering Heights was one of the few books he remembers liking from high school. Haley, how much Wuthering Heights did you consume in preparation for this episode, and what was your collective impression?
Okay, I watched in theater the 2026 Margot Robbie, Jacob Elordi movie. I watched the 2009 Masterpiece Theater version with Tom Hardy. And I consumed upwards of 200 to 300 TikToks that explained the family tree to me. And that also debated what race Heathcliff was written to be, and haters of the 2026 release. However, I actually really loved the 2026 adaptation and enjoyed myself very much. And I feel embarrassed to say that because a lot of people hated it and I didn't. How about you guys? Kristal, what did you watch?
Well, I watched the 2009 PBS version with Tom Hardy and Charlotte Riley. I chose this version because the internet told me it was the closest thing to the book. I don't know if that's true or not. I really liked it. I really, really liked it. I got a little bit lost at first. I panicked and I sent you guys all a Voxer going like, can you please explain this to me? To which Sullivan then sent me a family tree outline, which helped a lot. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm a visual learner. And I was captivated. Particularly, I was fixated on Heathcliff's lips. Mostly the upper one.
His top lip?
His top lip. It just, Tom Hardy, I don't know if that guy is like imperfectly perfect in a way.
I should have sent you a couple TikToks that could have explained too.
Yeah.
Sullivan, what did you consume? Wait, you already told us a lot.
Yeah, I did consume a lot. I did go to the theater and see the Margot Robbie Jacob Elordi film, which was my introduction to Wuthering Heights, by the way. Like
Me too.
That was my intro, though I didn't like it. Like as a standalone, I didn't like it. I despised the Margot Robbie character. Catherine, like as portrayed, not Margot Robbie as an actress. Love Margot Robbie. The character, I hated her so much, even as a child and an adult, that I found it really difficult to enjoy the movie because I thought that character was insufferable, that I just wanted her dead. And I was happy when she finally died. Spoiler, which was not till the end of the movie. But I also watch, Kristal.
Are we giving spoilers for an 1800?
For 1847, if you haven't watched it yet, like, we spoil everything else. Of course we're going to spoil this. I also thought that the Masterpiece Theater version with Tom Hardy was the best from 2009. I actually genuinely really enjoyed that version. It was the third version that I watched.
I really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I also watched the 1992 Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche version, which I literally can't tell you a single thing about that version other than the fact that it was Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche. And I know that because it's in my notes right here. I have no recollection of it whatsoever, even though I watched it. And I watched the original 1939 version with Laurence Olivier in it, which is like a 1939 movie, whatever. And then I did read the book, and I read some other things as well.
Can I just ask what possessed you to deep dive so hard into Wuthering Heights? Was it just you had the time, or you just wanted to make us look bad, or like what was it?
Kristal's like, maybe you should go on some dates. Maybe you should have a social life. No, honestly, well, first, okay, I like to be prepared. But I think a lot of what we do on this show, I have already consumed in one form or fashion at some point in time, even if it's not been a long time. But I really was going in cold to Wuthering Heights. And it's complicated. It is a complicated story, which is the reason why there's 9 billion TikToks about it. And, you know, like I said, I did more on the literary end, more of the reading end, but there's also like literally hundreds of academic articles about it as well, because there's a lot that's debatable. There's a lot that's confusing. There's a reason why there is a family tree on the wiki, because it's really confusing. So some of it was like for me to understand, like, what the hell is happening? and so like, yeah, so that was why I just kept going and going and going. So a brief synopsis, other than the fact that Kathy dies, is this has to do with the film has to do essentially with two families, the Earnshaws and the Lintons. They live in close proximity. Kathy Earnshaw, as a child, her father comes home from a trip away. Her mother is dead. Her father returns from a trip away, a trip to Liverpool, with a small boy child he has picked up on the street. And he's like, we've adopted him. He's part of our family now. And so they grow up together. There's also a brother named Hindley. And they grow up. At some point, Catherine and Heathcliff sort of fall in love. I'm getting a little cagey now because, like, these versions, you know, things happen a little bit differently across all the versions. So I'm kind of munging them all together to tell a coherent story. Catherine then, even though she sort of loves Heathcliff, decides to marry her neighbor, Edgar Linton, because Edgar Linton has money. And Heathcliff is really angered by this. He seeks revenge. And eventually Kathy dies. There's a whole second generation. Everybody in the second generation has the same names as everybody in the first generation. And at the end of the book and most of the movies, Heathcliff dies also. I'm just going to stop talking. I know that's a really compelling synopsis for people that have never read it before.
So very compelling.
But I think from an adoptee standpoint, what we're going to talk about, we're going to focus on Heathcliff, because Heathcliff is an orphan child, you know, essentially adopted into the Earnshaw household. So like that's what we're going to be focusing on for purposes of this discussion.
How old do you think Heathcliff was when he came into the family? Like 10, 12?
I think he was small.
Littler?
Yeah. I think, yeah.
In the book, he's like carried in like a little bundle. And in the new movie, 2026 movie, he comes in and he looks 10 to me. Yeah.
I feel like, again, I read the book now, but I can't recall because I only read it once. So now I don't remember. So in the 2026 film, everybody is a bit older, like, which was part of the criticism about it, because Catherine Earnshaw is a teenage, like they're teenagers at this time when they fall in love. And of course, this is the 19th century. So one would, marry quite young. But, Margot Robbie's in her 30s. And so she is visibly, while a gorgeous woman, an older Catherine Earnshaw than was meant to be in the book.
Is that why you disliked her precociousness so much? Just act better, Catherine.
No, but even the child actress, she's awful. She's terrible.
Was she worse in the 2026 adaptation over the 2009?
9,000 times worse.
Okay.
I did not like Catherine Earnshaw until I watched the 2009 version.
Okay, yeah, because I found her enjoyable.
Yes.
She was just like this free spirit, and nobody seemed bothered by the fact that her and Heathcliff were like falling in love. Like, would your families be a little like weirded out if you started falling in love with your adoptive brother?
Oh, so now we're going to get into it, right? Like this is the.
I mean, let's get into it. Like that.
We're gonna have to put this on. We're gonna have to put this part on the teasers. Otherwise, nobody's gonna listen to this episode, except pop star Justin. Maybe I'll ask Haley first because Haley, you've also spoken to hundreds of adoptees. Is this a thing?
I'm going to say a very negative thing first. I believe there are way higher rates of sexual abuse and assault against adopted children in their adoptive families because not related, it feels like a welcome mat for predators. So I grew up as an only child. I never had any relatives say anything to me inappropriately or anything like that. I've heard of that. I don't know that we've ever talked about it on air, but certainly I've heard of say first cousins saying we're not related. So,
I actually have had that experience. I think it was in my early 20s. And it was
oh my God.
Yeah. And it was like my adoptive mother's cousin's son. So what is that? Like a first cousin once removed or something like that? Like, you know what I mean? So it was like that was the relationship. He was like, and we were the same age. So we'd like go out, early 20s, you're like out all the time, right? So we would like hang out as friends. At one point, he sort of like hinted at maybe something else. And then he said that it's okay because I talked to my friends and we're not really related.
He talked to his friends?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that was literally
consulted.
Yeah. I actually think that, and I think, because now this was a very long time ago, I think that was the last time we spoke. I don't think I ever spoke to him again.
So give me emotions. Like what was running through your mind? How did you feel in your body? Like, walk me through this.
Well, I think it's exactly, for listeners, the face that you and Haley just made when I said that, which is what bothered me more than anything else was what you just said, Kristal, the consulting of the friends, I think bothered, well, I guess it was two things. First, it was like the consulting of the friends. Like it felt very, I felt very dirty, even though like I didn't do anything, and then it was the like, we're not really related, right? You're not actually part of my family thing, which I don't know about you both, but differences aside, growing up, because I was not in Reunion growing up, I had one family. Like as far as I was concerned, like I had one family. And so to have a family member say, like, you're not part of my family was it wasn't confusing, but it was shocking because no one had ever said that to me before. That like you're not actually part of this family.
I'm so sorry, first of all. And then, yeah, like that's the only family you've ever known. So obviously they're like already categorized as do not date, right? And then that happens.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awful. That's awful. I mean, I always had crushes on my cousins, always. And like in my mind, I was like, well, I'm not really related to them. And maybe I'm saying too much in this moment right now. But I just want to say, I had lots of crushes because I just loved boys. And I still love boys. I had a crush on Heathcliff when I was watching this show. So,
Okay, wait.
yeah.
You grew up with brothers.
Yes.
They were older than you.
Yes. Yes.
Like, if they had tried to, express interest in you, I mean, your parents would have shut that shit down.
100%. I mean, yeah. Yes. Like
this family, they're letting them go 24/7 off
Right?
to the moors to make out and God knows
Yes.
what. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, like Leslie Pate McKinnon, who does a lot of work with genetic sexual attraction, talks about the incest taboo, which is like when you grow up with your siblings, you innately have no desire to procreate with them or fall in love with them. And I would say like 100% that's how I felt about my adoptive brothers. Yeah. So this is a weird conversation, you guys.
Yeah.
Can we
Thanks,
move on?
Justin. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate you. So we are, again, like we're collapsing a bunch of things now because there are so many adaptations that happen here. I should say in the book, they don't have sex in the book, like as kids and that kind of stuff. That's not what happens in the book. However, in these adaptations, they're like running off to the moors and going at it. That's one thing. The other thing is, and Haley, I think you alluded to this on the TikToks. I didn't watch any TikToks, but that there is debate about whether or not Heathcliff and Kathy are actually related or not.
Right. Some people say that Mr. Earnshaw brought Heathcliff home and he was a bastard son that wasn't being taken care of. So he's like, okay, well, I guess I'll bring him under our roof. But in the book, I don't think there's any like proof of that or whatever. I should say I listened to maybe like a third of the book. I just couldn't.
The book leaves a question as far as who Heathcliff really is and where he comes from. Same with there's a scholarly debate as well about whether he was a bastard child or not. And I would say also in our community, right? Like people who are not told the truth about their parentage either, right? Like, and whether they are told they're adopted, but actually who they think an adoptive parent is actually a biological parent. Those kinds of things do happen in our community. The other thing we should talk about for Heathcliff, and again, Haley, like you alluded to in the TikToks, is there is a question about Heathcliff's race. And I know pop star Justin, when he raised this, the prospect of us doing this, Justin is of mixed race as well. And so I think that what he expressed to us is this is one of the reasons why this story really spoke to him. And so there is that question too. Haley, what did the TikTok say about that? I'm curious.
I mean, I feel like it was pretty much 50-50. Like, oh, well, the book, uses Romani slurs to describe Heathcliff. And there's a couple of things about him, looking like a little devil or just talking about his color as a bundle. And so people are like, that could be because he's an orphan, and that's how they talked about these discarded throwaway foundlings at the time. That's why Hindley, is described him as this, little devil, because he didn't want him to come and usurp any part of their family fortune, which dwindles. It's really mixed. I saw a lot of people super disappointed in casting of another white actor. The funny thing about, like, you sent us a list of, like, here, you can watch any of these things to prepare. And all the ones that were easy for me to get, the actor was white. I didn't see any of them where, how many versions are there where they actually cast a person of color?
So my understanding about that is that there's only one or two where a person of color is cast as Heathcliff. He's almost always cast as white. I think Heathcliff was not white. I don't think Heathcliff was white for me and like my reading and my understanding. I think he absolutely was a person of color. But again, like that's an issue of scholarly debate as well about just what was he. Most of the things I read, scholars say he wasn't white. Like there's more agreement on the fact that he wasn't white. Though what is he? Then like that's not clear at all. But the not white part. I will say also interestingly, I found a quote from Jackie Kay, who is a writer and an adoptee, a transracial adoptee from Scotland. And because in her memoir, Red Dust Road, she also talks about identifying with Heathcliff when she read Wuthering Heights. And what she says about Heathcliff, or Wuthering Heights, is she says, Wuthering Heights is an adoption story gone badly wrong. Heathcliff is the dark force the kind family invited home. Heathcliff brings the whole house toppling down.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
What a terrible take. I'm sorry, Jackie Kay.
Say more. No worries. Say more.
Well, I wanted to talk. Let's talk a little bit more about Heathcliff falling in love with Kathy. It's because he is discarded. He's living on the streets, and he gets taken in by this family, the Earnshaw family. The older brother despises him, beats him. The dad's a loser drunk who doesn't take care of him. He says he's going to turn him into this gentleman like himself, and is terrible. And Kathy is the only one who likes him and takes care of him and teaches him how to read and write and interacts with him. And of course it goes too far, but it's no wonder to me that he loves her because he's finally taken care of. Now things go awry, there's misunderstandings, which leads to Kathy going off and marrying into the rich Linton family, and Heathcliff goes off to make his own way in the world and prove to everyone he's worthy and all those things. I mean, talk about typical adoptee behavior. I think there's many adoptees who feel the need to prove their own worth. And so he comes back and he is terrible. And he's vicious. He does terrible things to everyone. He turns into this really bitter, hateful person. But to me, it's understandable because the one person in the world who loved him, he felt betrayed him, and now he's trying to get revenge on everyone. So to say that the failure is Heathcliff's, the failure is Mr. Earnshaw bringing Heathcliff home and then just leaving the servants and his child to deal with him. Come on, that's so stupid. What a stupid take. Sorry. I know she's beloved, but
it was very different in the version I watched because Mr. Earnshaw was very loving to Heathcliff. It was almost like Mr. Earnshaw was disappointed with Hindley as a son. And so then he brought Heathcliff in, and he was like the son he never had. So there was, again, that really high expectation on his life, and he had high hopes for him. He said, I found that child in the gutter, and I shall raise him up to be a fine young gentleman.
There's another quote I want to read because I want to get both of your takes on it. And this was by a critic. And I think this was a book from the 19th century, I think, or early 20th century. So it's old. But it says, Heathcliff is either Superman or Subman. He misses the broad middle register, which I thought was an interesting take. This idea that Heathcliff, depending on your reading of him, is on either end of the good bad spectrum, as opposed to being like where I think most of us are, is somewhere in the middle. And I was thinking about how in all of so much of the media, adoptees, how often are adoptees the serial killers, right? Like there's these, we exist on these extreme ends of the spectrum as we're portrayed in media. We're never this we're not allowed to be these middle people. It's either you're a serial killer, or you're an angry adoptee, or you have to be a totally grateful adoptee. You can't, if you critique anything, then you're not grateful and you don't love your parents. And, all of these things that other people put upon us to sort of push us to that either ends of that spectrum.
What was the point of Wuthering Heights? What was wait, was this a real story? Is this a true story? Are you laughing at me?
No, I can't
I'm
wait
not
to hear
laughing
what
at you.
Sullivan says.
Well, you answer. Why don't you answer?
First question, is it a true story? Second question, what's the point? Go.
It's fiction. It's fiction.
It is.
What was the point?
It is. Well, okay. Can I answer the fiction first, though, and then you can answer what is the point? So it is fiction. Like any good fiction, though, it's rooted in the author's experience, and so Emily Brontë grew up on the moors. She and her siblings grew up in pretty much isolation for the majority of their lives. And so the characters in Wuthering Heights were really strongly influenced by those people that Emily came in contact with, which were, in the grand scheme, not that many people. She died quite young. She died without ever having been married. And her brother Branwell, most critics agree, was the model for Hindley. Branwell had gone away to be a tutor in a family's home and was rumored to have fallen in love with the wife. He tutored a child and, lived there with the man and the wife, and is rumored to have fallen in love with the wife. There's some debate about whether or not that love was reciprocated, but in any case, he got fired from that job. As a result of whether it were his feelings or a mutual affair, and came home angry and bitter, and from there on out had a real problem with alcohol and drugs, and was really never able to get his life back together. And it was the time that that Branwell Brontë had come home, and they were all living in the house again, when he was sort of really raging with this, as Emily was sitting down to write Wuthering Heights. And so that was the turmoil of the house as she's writing this book. And that's who you see, the Hindley character is then based upon her brother Branwell.
What year was the book written?
1847. Yeah.
Okay. And then my next question, what was the point?
Haley, I think Haley was going to take that one.
Yeah, totally. What was the point? It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's fiction. It's this, the same reason anybody writes fiction.
like I watched the 2026 movie, and I also hated Kathy, but I identified a little bit with her precociousness. I said that before, precocious. Like that's how I'll like categorize that. Heathcliff was hot. He took care of her. They took care of each other. So I was kind of cheering for them, even though it's like taboo. And I don't know, there's the rich other family, like all of those things. But in the end, it's just a tragedy. And I was sobbing with the rest of the people in the theater.
There were criers in my theater too. There were criers. I will say the 2026 version, Isabella, who was Isabella Linton, so Edgar's younger sister, who became Kathy's sister-in-law. That character, as portrayed in 2026, was hands down my favorite character in the movie. Like nobody else was even close. She was so over the top, like it was a weird innocence. I don't know, Haley, how you would describe it. Like an innocence that was really uncomfortable to watch because she was too old to be acting like that. Like she acted like a 4-year-old, but she was probably in her late teens.
Yeah, which made everything else that happened subsequently just even worse, and made Heathcliff look worse. All of it.
Yeah, because Heathcliff marries her
and
keeps her as a sex
2026
slave.
version,
And keeps her as a sex slave.
It's not good.
Really?
Yeah.
She has to pretend to be a dog. It's quite the
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I am really glad that I watched the G version of the PBS version because no, who am I kidding? I'm totally going to go watch the
You're going to love it. You're going to love it, Kristal.
So
There's no doubt. You're going to love it.
I'm totally
gonna
going to
love
watch
it.
it.
You're going to love it.
It's pretty hot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We should say one more thing about the 2026 version, though, because it leaves out the second generation of these families, which is in the book, which was in the 2009 version that we saw, because there is a second generation. Kathy gives birth to a daughter named Kathy, and then she died, and then big Kathy dies, and Kathy first is forced to marry Heathcliff's son, and then after he dies, marries her cousin, which was also super like Hindley's son. Marrying the cousins, we should say, for people, is like very common at that time. You know, in the 19th century, very common for people to marry their cousins.
I feel a lot better now that I confessed to the world that I had a crush on my cousins earlier in the episode. Proceed. Proceed. It was normal at one time, people.
It was absolutely normal.
and
at
you
one
weren't
time.
related. So
when
just,
Exactly.
yeah.
when the family line and fortune depended upon it.
No, but it's, I think what you're gonna get to is it shows this trauma passing down to the next generation, which we absolutely see. I mean, that's facts are facts. So yeah.
Okay, but just clear something up for me. Who was Heathcliff's son again? And who is the mother of Heathcliff's son?
Isabella Linton, his wife.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Isabella Linton. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, and I will say, and this is, this will be in the show notes, but there is this whole scholarly argument. We talked before about race. And so if in fact Heathcliff is not white, if, for example, Heathcliff is black, which is one argument. There are other arguments about him not being white, but also not being black, being Romani, being like several other things. But there is an argument that Heathcliff is black. And following that line, if Heathcliff is black, it would make Heathcliff's son half white and half black. And there is also then this argument about the fact that Heathcliff and Isabella's son is very sickly. He's sickly, he's weak, and that matches the trope at the time, again, mid-19th century, of biracial people, mulattoes, as they were termed at the time, being lesser constituted people, lesser in all the ways. And so there is this argument then that in fact Heathcliff was black. And one of the reasons we know he was black is because he had this biracial child who was weak. And there's also in this there was a scholar that also did all this research into the Liverpool slave trade at the time. Heathcliff was found in Liverpool. Like, we know that he was picked up off the streets of Liverpool. And so, who were the black people that would have been in Liverpool at the time? But yeah, this idea of passing down trauma. And also what was interesting to me that I think we experience as adoptees is we know that we have the trauma of parental separation, but we also inherit the trauma from our adoptive families too, right? Like
100%. Can I speak to that?
Please.
Okay. Within the churched community, I have heard churched people, I love you, churched people. Okay. But this is where I have heard this. Okay. I have heard them say, I would not adopt because I don't want to take on the generational curses of that child. And I'm thinking, but I had to take on all the generational shit from all you guys. Like, you're saying that I'm going to come into your family line and contaminate it? When I go to therapy, I'm not just dealing with my generational stuff from, my birth mother's side, my birth father's side, which, by the way, now that I know more, I can see how things have been passed down. But then I'm also dealing with the generational trauma of, the things that had happened to my adoptive family too. So, it's like we're essentially dealing with 4 lines of generational stuff as an adoptee. Have you guys ever thought about that before?
Yeah, I for sure have. And I can see it, right? Like through therapy, I can see like, oh yeah, this is where this comes from. Yeah. It's this inheritance that we can't get away from. And when you're saying that, Kristal, I'm also thinking about the people who the babies are blank slates people, right? The people who, despite like being debunked a million times over, think that they would prefer to adopt babies because the babies won't have the trauma that like the 5-year-old has in foster care or the 10-year-old has in foster care, which is it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous.
And can you imagine parenting from a place like as an adoptive parent with the awareness that this child is coming with generational trauma that you like, and to be aware of it and to I think that for me is like why we need to be aware of the cultural differences and the history of the culture, and not to give preconceived trauma to this child or impose anything upon them, but just to have this awareness. And can I just say, I really do love church people. I only said that because those are the only circles where I've heard people say things like that.
And we see Heathcliff then take on this trauma of what went on in the Earnshaw family, this family that he grew up in. And he really takes that with him through the entirety of his life, until his dying days.
I'm curious because I'm going to say, like, even though he does all these bad things, like, I really love Heathcliff. And I'm rooting for him. And, like, is that what you guys, was that your impression too? Because for a lot of people, like, isn't he the villain? Like, he's the villain. So, I don't know.
That's the beauty of creating a villain. There's how many villains do they make movies about that you have this incredible compassion for, or you fall in love with the villain and you're rooting for them in a way, right? And I think that was the purpose of the character, especially to show it through film. Yeah, I loved Heathcliff.
Is he the first anti-hero?
I'm trying to think if we've done an anti-hero before. Maybe not. I mean, I'm Team Heathcliff. It's not even close. You know how I feel about Catherine. So, yeah, Team Heathcliff all the way.
With that said, I think you're going to love my award then today.
Ooh.
Okay. This will be the second time I've given the Conditional Love Award. First received by Sybil Stone in The Family Stone, and now awarded to Catherine Earnshaw. While she initially unapologetically loved Heathcliff unconditionally, she ultimately chose status over connection. If she simply stuck with her choice to love Heathcliff and run away with him, all this could have been avoided, and serves as a good lesson to go with your first pick in order to avoid driving your lover toward insanity and ultimately death.
Good call, Kristal. Good call.
Amazing.
Listeners, viewers, and pop stars, we would love to hear from you. What award would you give to Wuthering Heights or to a character from the film? Leave your comments for us on Instagram and on YouTube.
Adoption Pop is podcast journalist Haley Radke,
Filmmaker Kristal Parke,
and cultural critic Sullivan Summer. In researching this episode, we relied on Emily Bronte's novel, Wuthering Heights, and various of its film and television adaptations, all of which are listed in the show notes. We also relied on a whole undergraduate syllabus, including Emily Bronte's A Biography by Winifred Guerin, Emily Brontë by Muriel Sparks and Derek Stanford, Emily Brontë, A Psychological Portrait by Norma Crandall, Red Dust Road by Jackie Kay, Wuthering Heights and the Liverpool Slave Trade by Maya Lisa von Snydern in ELH, and Images of Blackness in the Works of Charlotte and Emily Brontë by Reginald Watson in the CLA Journal.
If you like what we do, drop us a rating on your podcast app, find and follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and let us know what you want us to cover in future episodes.
Join us next week for another episode of Adoption Pop. We promise there will be no wire hangers.